All right, the Apollo program. Now, the Apollo program was the third space program founded by NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And the goal of the Apollo program was to land a man on the moon. Now, the first launch of the Apollo program was going to be Apollo 1. Now, in Apollo 1, they're going to actually end in tragedy. Okay, so all three astronauts, Grimson, White, and Chaffee, are going to be killed in this launch. So what's going to happen, you can see this in the visual right through here. The three men are sat up, ready to go in their launch pad. There's going to be a spark, a malfunction with the electrical stuff inside of the command module, the thing they're sitting in, on ignition of the rocket. When this happens, it's going to cause an immediate fire due to the high amounts of oxygen located inside of that chamber. They were unable to get out of their seats and open the door, thus they all were killed and burned to death. This is a major tragedy for the United States, for the space program, and it also really set the Americans back when it came for the space race to the moon. So as a result of this, Apollo 2 through Apollo 6 were going to be unmanned missions. As NASA was figuring out how do we fix this problem, make sure this does not happen again, protecting our astronauts, making sure everyone is safe, but still reaching the goal that we want, which is reaching the moon. Now, Apollo 7 is going to be the first one after Apollo 1 to actually send astronauts up into space. Now, the whole goal of Apollo 7 was simply we need to check communication, making sure everything works, making sure NASA and the astronauts in space, ground control, and the astronauts can actually communicate with each other and know what's going on. If this is going to work, we can move forward with the program. If not, we got to figure out how to fix it. Now we're going to get Apollo number 8. Apollo number 8 is important because it's the first mission to orbit the moon. And they're going to go in these Saturn V rockets, as you can see right through here. It's broken down. This is really a massive rocket, 360 feet tall. To put this in perspective, the space shuttle, the most recent program by NASA, was about half that size, which goes to show exactly how large these rockets really are. Going in stages, breaking apart, falling back down until the only thing left is going to be the command module right at the end. It's also important to note, right up on the top of the rocket, we have this little thing right there. It's a propulsion device. That was added after Apollo 1. In case something happened, it would allow the astronauts to escape, okay, kind of to propel themselves away from the main rocket and then go back down. So Apollo 8 is important because it's the first one to orbit the moon. This shows this is the first time in history of the world that someone has actually orbited not Earth. Okay, so orbited a different celestial body other than Earth. Very significant. It shows the United States and the Russians that this is actually possible. Apollo 9 is going to be important because it's the first flight of the command service module with the lunar module. So this is the first time they're going to test the lunar module. This is a little bit of a maneuver that's going to happen. I'll talk about in a second. Basically, they have to go up, flip the command module around backwards, and then dock in space. If they mess that one up, they're not going to have a chance to land on the moon. The whole mission will be for naught. It's the first flight to actually test that. Apollo 10 is going to be kind of the test run. They're going to do everything like they would do on the actual moon landing, short of actually landing on the moon. They're going to begin the descent, but not fully go through with that descent. So if Apollo 10 works out, we are good to go. We are ready to land on the moon, which brings us to Apollo 11. Now, Apollo 11 is the first mission to the moon. You can see right here, again, that Saturn V rocket broken down up into here. Everything's going to be there. Okay, the bottom part's basically just fuel tanks. The job of that is to get the astronauts up into space. Lunar module is going to be used up in space, getting them on the moon. Apollo capsule getting them back. So what you can see right here is the launch trajectory. What's going to happen is they're going to jettison themselves up into space. Once they're in space, reaching low Earth orbit, they're going to do that for a couple times before then jettisoning out briefly and going on a path to the moon. This is going to first step before they're actually on the path to the moon is going to take about 3.5 hours. At this point, they're simply going to turn off their rockets and just coast through space. There is no gravity, or there's nothing really stopping them, no friction, no air. They're just going to simply jettison through space until they reach the orbit with the moon. At this point, they're going to have the two men, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong are going to enter a different module, break apart from the command module, which is now going to orbit the moon with Michael Collins inside, and the three men are going to go and land on the moon before jettisoning back. Okay, the three men to land on the moon. Neil Armstrong is the first man on the moon. You need to know that name. That is an important name. Buzz Aldrin's second man on the moon. He's a man pictured in this photograph right here, taken by Neil Armstrong. Notice it's cleverly done so that you can look in Mr. Aldrin's visor and actually see Neil Armstrong in there as well. And finally, we have Michael Collins, 3 men on the moon. Apollo 12 is going to be the second mission to the moon. That's going to be important and significant. Apollo 13, great movie made about this one. Tom Hanks is in it. Its explosion happens on board shortly after takeoff. It nearly kills the entire crew. They're going to lose vast majority of their oxygen, and they're not really sure if they're going to be able to make it back to Earth. They're going to have to go continuing on their path because there is no way of turning around, going farther from Earth, jettison around the moon, use the gravitational force of the moon to propel them back towards Earth. Ultimately, they are going to make it back alive and safe, but this nearly ended in tragedy. Apollo 14 and 17 simply are going to be geologists going up to collect samples from the moon. The moon rover is going to be up there, and Alan Shepard is going to go and actually take some golf balls and a golf club up to the moon and be the first person to play golf on something other than Earth. Right here you can see the moon rover. It's going to allow them to go distances on the moon they previously could not do. Solar powered, as you can see right here. Pretty darn awesome car. But yeah, that's all. Any questions about the Apollo program, please contact me down below. Otherwise, good luck.